Hi everyone, so today I want to talk about flying, which is a difficult topic for me to talk about because I love flying. I've taken many flights in my lifetime. My first flight was when I was 6 months old, flying back to Singapore from the US. And since then I've had the privilege of visiting many other countries. I went back to look into my photo archive, and here's one of the earliest photos I have of myself in an airport, looking dashing as always. I was 13 and we were flying into Japan for a vacation, and from the plane I was able to photograph Mount Fuji, and then as we were approaching Tokyo, you could see like the entire city sort of laid out below us. It was a really incredible experience, being able to be part of a different city and experience a different culture, and just realize that there was a whole other world out there. Since then, flying has allowed me to experience some other incredible experiences, including skiing, living on board a World War II battleship, witnessing other ways of living, and most importantly, awakening my climate awareness. Seeing coral bleaching with my own eyes was one of the first things that moved me to research more about climate change and eventually got me involved in climate action. In fact, I was so enamored with flying when I was younger that I dreamed of becoming a pilot. I learned how to fly in Singapore. Here's a photo of my first solo flight above Seletar Airport. Thankfully, I didn't go that far in my training and I didn't end up becoming a commercial or military pilot. And these days, flying is not as easy a task for me to undertake. So I did a quick search on Google and found the consensus that flying produces about 2% of global emissions, or 915 million tons of CO2 a year. That's not a large amount, but it's also not nothing. And I was looking at another research paper on the impact of tourism, and researchers calculated that tourism generates about 8% of the world's global carbon emissions. This carbon footprint includes things like transport, food, infrastructure that is necessary to support tourists that enter a country. But only a small portion of people have ever traveled on a plane, yet everyone on Earth must deal with the impacts of flying. There's no definitive statistic on how many people have ever stepped onto an airplane, but gathering data from different reports gives us a good hunch. So a Huffington Post article in 2016 put the number at about 18%, while some experts quoted in a DW article estimated it to be between 5 to 10% of the world that has flown on an airplane. Boeing's own CEO said that over 80% of the world has never stepped on a plane. So we can safely say that at most, only 1 out of every 5 people to live on this planet has had the benefit of flying. For me, this means that flying for leisure is a form of climate injustice. A small proportion of people reap the benefits of international tourism, but the whole population must suffer from the effects of it. More importantly, the people who will be most dramatically affected by the climate emergency tend to come from the poorest segments of society, and these are the people who can't afford to fly at all. So if achieving climate justice means that we ensure that those who do not have as much resources are protected from the actions of those who have more resources, then international tourism must end tomorrow. It is in this line of reasoning that I've stopped flying for leisure or for vacations. Some folks may argue that the solution to this imbalance or inequality is to ensure that everybody has the ability to fly. Until we have a genuinely zero carbon aviation industry, this cannot be the way that we achieve justice. Quintupling the amount of flights that we have today will guarantee global climate disaster. Others may argue that carbon offsets are a good way to ease the guilt of flying. I'm not so sure. Very few people I know purchase carbon offsets when they travel. And more importantly, some studies question the effectiveness of carbon offsets altogether. So one popular carbon offset is reforestation, or the planting of new trees. However, a report produced by the European NGO Fern in 2013 titled Carbon Discredited noted that optimal rates of carbon sequestration in trees only occur when the trees are between 15 to 35 years old. Furthermore, it is unclear whether the trees will actually still be standing in 15 years' time when they are the most effective. Maybe the landowner decides to sell the land to a paper company or to a plantation. Perhaps the changing climate hampers the tree's ability to grow. Either way, the carbon credit is paid for today, but the actual carbon sequestration or storage or offset is only going to happen far down in the future, and it's not even guaranteed. In my opinion, carbon offsets are a risky place to bank the future of humanity in. Sometimes I like to think of what an ideal world would look like and how we can build towards this utopian society. In my ultimate utopian future, all flights will be zero carbon, powered by super dense lithium batteries, or nuclear fusion, or solar energy, or some other crazy form of flight technology that does not exist yet. But that technology does not exist, and we have no guarantee that it will happen at all. So in an alternative utopian future where we do not have zero carbon flying, then my ideal is that the climate is stable and there are no flights. In this society, folks find new ways of enjoying themselves, traveling locally without flying, purchasing food from within the region, exploring more of their own backyards. The huge global corporations that depend on flying in order to keep them up give way to more regional organizations and regional bodies and local companies that focus more on producing and consuming in the region. As a result, local business owners flourish. Now, any effort to build towards this utopic society and outcome must start today. And making the personal choice not to fly brings us closer to this future. Now, the single largest challenge that comes from eliminating flights is that we will also lose cultural exchanges and appreciation of distant and different ways of living. This cultural exchange has no doubt helped us become more open-minded, kind, understanding, in our interactions with people who are different. I have no easy answers as to how we might regain this perspective in a flightless world. Slower travel over land or sea may be one way in which we reach out to distant shores, but that might not be sufficient to answer the challenge, and that doesn't give us long distance travel. How do we solve this problem? To be honest, I'm not sure. Is a lack of long-distance cultural interaction a greater threat than the climate crisis? Again, I'm not sure, but this time, I don't think it is. So if we don't fly for leisure, then what do we do? So my family experimented with this question last year. For the semester break, I told my family that we couldn't fly, and we didn't. Instead, we spent time in Singapore indulging in activities locally. So we did yoga, karaoke, climbing, pottery lessons together, and we had a great time living in each other's company. And there were tons of other things that I wish we could have done. For example, exploring the Kranji marshes, going kayaking in the city, trying our hands at darts. The list really runs on the things that I wanted to do in that time. But the point is, we had a good break, we enjoyed each other's company, and there was no need to fly to do it. Not flying has also dramatically changed my approach to mental health. I no longer expect a holiday at the end of each semester or at the end of the year. In the past, I used to take on a lot of work, really overwork myself and take on a lot of responsibilities and stuff going on. And I would say to myself, okay, I just have to tahan until the next trip. I can sleep less, take on more work, I'll deal with the stress. And then in 3 months' time, when I leave and I fly, I will let everything out, I'll relax, I'll stretch out on a bed, I will go and do everything that I wanted to do, and I will reset. Nowadays, I don't live that way. I check in with myself on a regular basis. I'm not reliant on huge vacations to relieve stress and get rest. Instead of having sort of extreme highs and lows, I live in a more comfortable middle space where I'm watching out for myself every day and building in relaxation exercises and self-care exercises into my daily routine rather than having it be a huge thing that I do every once in a while. In my lifetime, I've also been privileged to see a lot, but there is a lot more that I haven't seen. I haven't seen the Northern Lights, the Pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu. I haven't eaten fugu. I haven't gone bungee jumping. I haven't camped in the desert. I would love to see the sardine run off the African coast. I would love to go on safari, see elephants, cheetahs, so on and so forth. But I also won't be flying for vacations, ever. Or at least until there's some sort of zero carbon way of travel on flight. And so I might never see some of these things. And that's okay with me. If my lack of travel helps to preserve a stable climate and protect these ecosystems and people that I would love to visit, then that's fine. Our happiness shouldn't be determined by our ability to experience something that we've never experienced before. It's a nice experience, but it's not necessary in order for us to be happy. A final thought: if we don't travel for leisure, should we travel for business or to meet family, so on and so forth? That ultimately is a personal decision for each of us to decide. Some business travel helps to confront the climate crisis. Sometimes family is more important than anything else in the world. It's a tough decision to weigh. But we all know that the climate crisis is worsening, and every butt in an airline seat signals demand for that product. So if you believe that buying metal straws and rejecting plastic bags or metal straws signals your desire for a better world, then not flying is consistent with this logic as well. If you're a strong believer in institutional changes, then campaigning for a steep carbon tax and mandatory offsets in the aviation industry is important. And I hope to see more people taking up this work because really nobody's looking at it right now. That said, I am skeptical about the effectiveness of offsets or tax. I think the strongest signal for reform to the aviation industry is to shun the system as it exists now and return to a more local and less extreme way of living in the process. Now, I know that this is a controversial topic, and there are going to be a lot of thoughts about this, and so I welcome, your thoughts on this issue. What do you think? Slide into my DMs, drop me a comment, let me know how you feel. At the end of the day, the question is, would you be okay with admitting to yourself or your children in 30 years' time that you were part of wrecking the climate, but you had a good time? Which is a very hot take, but too bad. The climate is also in a hot state. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.